going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Hello there and welcome to Trash Compactor. In this video I'm going to be making a Mythosaur. So this is a Mythosaur from my Etsy store. So I've made and designed a Mythosaur in resin. Though the Mythosaur hasn't appeared in any episodes of The Mandalorian, there is some artwork on the internet which many people have seen by Eldon Ardente, who is a graphic designer based in Sydney, Australia. But he has made some concept art based on what his interpretation of the Mythosaur. In a lot of the pictures online, there is illustrations of the Mythosaur that looks like a dragon, very George and the Dragon style, a dragon without wings basically. But Eldon's concept art made it more like a bit like a T-Rex with a different head and slightly different pose, and just quite like the style of it. So made this model based on those drawings. This is the prototype, one of many. There has been several. Did a larger scale and it was just too big. It would cost far too much to print. It weighed a ton. So what I've done is I've built this so it can be a kit and is sort of in a vintage Kenner style scale. So it's not 100% accurate to the size of a figure. So you've got this Boba Fett here, and the idea is that it fits inside and sort of like looks like he's riding a Mythosaur. So the Mythosaur is I believe is the icon that is Boba Fett's shoulder pad. So, you know, hence why you could put Boba Fett in there. Though the concept art by Eldon shows the Mandalorian riding the Mythosaur. In this video, what I'm going to do is put this together and paint it. So this model kit consists of the body. It's got two legs which join in the middle, which then create the legs. Done them so they can sort of like be pinned together and be movable against the body. You may notice the powdering on it. This is because it's the prototype. I've got the necks that are coming out. I've reduced them 1% so they're not so tight. So they go in and will be more movable. But as you can see, the thing is with resin, when you put resin against each other and you move it, it does make that squeaky noise which drives my dogs nuts. But it does leave white chalky marks. So as you can see where it rubs. So once this is together and the pins are in, and it's painted, I'm using this for display purposes, so and for the video, but the idea is that the legs can actually move quite freely within the body without creating too much rub. So we've got the legs, as you can see how they fit together, so I glue those in. The holes are there for when it's being printed and draining and curing, so the legs go together, tail goes on, sort of creates the thing. The head's got a pin, there's holes again in the neck to allow, and then we've got the arms which also go in and peg. Head can move very, very slightly, but based on the design it can't move up and down because it is in resin. I did think about making the head a complete fixed on part, but I just quite like the idea of it just having a wee bit of movement. There is also a saddle pack just to clip on the back. In the concept drawing there isn't a saddle. You can see the Mandalorian is just riding it, but I thought pop a saddle in, it gives somewhere to put the legs. And then I've created fake legs as well, so they can be painted up for Mando or for Boba, whichever you wish. So pop them in, he can sit on there and looks like he's riding the Mythosaur. In the concept picture, there's also some prisoners that seem to be straddled over the back. What I did, I also made a little prisoner rack. So the idea is I can put that on there instead of the backpack, and then grab some figures and they can be draped across the prisoner rack and then sort of keeps them in place. Let's see. So it's sort of to a Kenner style scale. The original, as I said, was twice as big, but just totally impossible to print and would cost an absolute fortune. As you can see, this is in 3.75 scale. And I'm just going to take it all apart and start painting. With resin, when you have flat areas, what I like to do is to make sure that they are nice and smooth. So I always get a little bit of sandpaper on all my models and just give it a very, very gentle sand on any flat areas that are going to join. If you're actually doing it, glue it all in together and then seal this with some form of putty. But I'm not too fussed about the joints. I think it adds to the vintage look and feel. Also just going to use some very fine sandpaper again and just give the legs a little bit of a sand just to smooth them off, to make sure there's no little dimples where the supports were when it was printed. So as you can see, there's a few dimples just there. I just want to make sure that they're completely gone. There we go, that's nice and smooth. So that's a lot smoother than it was. Dimples are pretty much, they probably show up a lot better worse on the camera than they do in real life. Neck as well, give that a quick sand. There we go. So the Mythosaur is sort of, it's not dark brown, but it's not exactly all one colour. It's a bit patchy. I'm going to use a chocolate brown and just stick this into a little plastic tray. And what I'm wanting to do, I'm not going to mix the paint, I'm going to splodge it on. Brown's a lot runnier than the green, and I'm going to sort of mottle it on in effect so I get different layers. And then I've got, so that's just a yellow, that's a uniform green, a nice brown, chocolate brown, maroon chocolate brown, and then I've got a buff. There we are. So stick a bit of those in there, and the idea is, in my little mixing trays, I'm just going to give this a bit of a splodge. There we are. And I'm not wanting to make it look like it's camouflage, so I'm just badly mixing paint, so it's not going to be all even. But the key thing I want to do, probably want to put the tail on first, because I can paint all that together at the same time. So I need to make sure I put it on the right way around. So as you can see, there is a right way and a wrong way, as you wanted the tail pointing downwards. So that does snugly fit in there like that. But just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to use some super glue and glue the tail on. Stick a bit around the edge, and then a bit of the glue should nicely fill some of the cracks. What we'll actually do, squeeze some on just to fill that gap up. Save me using a filler. Got some tissue, so what I'm just going to do is rub that super glue across the joint just to help it dry pretty quick. So as soon as that's dried, I'll give that a bit of a sand. So while that's drying, oops, I'll pop that over there and I'll start doing some painting on the legs. So you can be quite liberal with this. There is a bit of a skin texture to the model, so I don't want to put too much paint on. Might look a bit different slightly on the camera. In reality, there's a little bit of a brown tinge to that. And I'm not going to be too even with it because this is only going to be the first coat. So I'm literally going to throw that on there. While I'm at it, I will do a cover on the arms. Same with the head. I'm not too concerned about getting a thick coat on. I'm literally just trying to get a base on. I don't want too much paint on the paintbrush because I don't want to fill the eyes with paint. You do see people online who are spraying their models and they just keep spraying and spraying and spraying until there's no detail showing. I'll do for now. So that's sort of tacked off a bit now. Grab my sandpaper. What's nice, because this isn't 100% dry, it's near enough, but as it powders, the powder is going into the gap and filling the gap a little bit more. So it should look pretty invisible once it's painted. You'll still slightly see it, but it's fine. Bit of a dust off. It's not too bad. Sort of semi-filled it in. Feels quite smooth. Going over with some of the paint. It's not completely filled in the gap, but I don't mind. Looks more toyish rather than a realistic kit. That's the thing about what I like about Star Wars figures is they're not 100% accurate. The representations of what they're meant to look like. However, I have to say, the Mando figure, retro figure, is pretty damn good. Some people don't like the mould. I'm not sure why. It just looks like the old vintage Kenner line. I think they did a grand job. So it's been a while since I've done any videos, and the reason for that is I did have some technical problems with my iMovie, which I seem to corrupt all my videos and all my intros, and spent a lot of time trying to recover and fix it. I have managed to recover quite a few videos which I was working on at the time, but I just thought that while I'm fixing those, I would record a new one and get back on the horse. So it has been a while since I've released any videos. My Etsy store has been very busy after my feature on retro busting, so thank you, Michael. It's really great. Been selling a lot of really cool accessories to a lot of cool people who've been updating their vintage Star Wars collections. So part of the kit for the Mythosaur is I've got these little tusk rings, and the idea with these is that what you do is you can thread through an elastic band which will become the reins, or a piece of string, or a little bit of leather. It's entirely down to you. I'm going to grab a thickish paintbrush. I'm hoping will fit on the end there. Yep, pop that on. And then I'm going to give this a good covering with some brown. Could paint them silver if you wanted them to look metal, but I think they're going to look fine brown, because once I do the tusks they're going to be in a cream, so these will stand out on their own. Doesn't matter about painting the insides, no one's going to see them. So there we go, they can dry. I think the saddle needs to be in a brown as well, so I just want to be careful here. I'm going to continue to add more paint to the body, so it doesn't matter if I do it. There we go. I'm going to have to put more paint on the body. Yeah, I don't know what it is about this chocolate brown, but it's the runniest paint out of all of the paints I've got from, is it Vallejo? It's Vallejo, I can never say it. No idea why. They're usually quite a decent thickness, but for some, it's not even a airbrush paint, which you can understand if they're a little bit more liquidy. So, just gonna... Yeah, see, it's running already. It's just such a watery paint. Be careful with that. Yep, there you go. It's run all over the other side as well. So yeah, I'm going to do the saddle, and then I'm going to touch up to the edges of the saddle with the final body colour, because it's not giving me the option to paint a nice neat edge. So rather than fighting it, make it work for me. There we go. So I'm going to paint the inside as well. Don't have to go all the way down, but it just makes it look a bit neater. Smear that down the body a bit so it blends in a bit more. Yeah, that'll do for now. Put on the plastic. Also for the saddle, you've got the little seat cover. So I'm going to paint that brown so it blends in. So that's if you don't have a retro figure and want to use, say, one of the vintage collection with the bendable knees on the seat, you can pop the little seat cover on, and then you can cover the hole. and then they've actually got somewhere to pop their bum. It's quite nice painting. It's been a while and I do find it very therapeutic. I'm also going to paint the dull brown holdall brown. Just going to stick a little bit of the buff in there just to lighten it a bit so it's slightly different colour. Just a little bit of a lighter brown. And then I've got the prisoner holder. Now my thinking with that is I would assume that that would be in a similar brown to the saddle. I'm actually going to do it the same colour as the backpack, because I don't want it to stand out, but I don't want it to blend in. That's what I like about painting on resin. People do prime resin. Mighty Jabber does some great paint jobs. He's very skilled when it comes to painting resin kits and figures. If you don't know his channel, then do check out the Mighty Jabber. He's a very, very, very good painter. Very honest as well. He makes mistakes and he just goes, oh, so I did this and I'll redo this again. Unlike some people who, like myself, I edit out my mistakes. So I'm going to leave those pieces to dry off properly. And then once they're dry, I will go back and start doing a mottled effect onto the skin, avoiding the saddle, of course. Okay, so everything's dried. What's annoying is that I actually just gave this a little bit of a sand to smooth out where the ridge was, but my camera didn't record it. So I missed that bit off, but it's okay. So what I've done is I've just literally grabbed my sandpaper. I've also got a sanding block and just gave this a bit of a rub just to help smooth it down a bit. Just taking a bit of paint off, but it's absolutely fine because what I'm going to be doing is this mottled effect. So I actually think that's fine. It's almost nearly invisible really, but I still see a little bit of a ridge, but it'll be absolutely fine. Now to do some sort of stippling. So a bit of paint on the brush. I'm just going to splodge this all over the body. There we go, that'll do for now on there. It's a bit patchy. Do the same on the legs. Now the head. Happy with that. It's patchy enough. Stick a bit more just around there. To get a little bit on the arms. I'll leave that to dry, and then I'm going to put the model together and then continue with the painting once it's built, because then I can then do stippling effects, do the belly, blend it in with the arms and the legs, and then it'll all start to come together. Okay, so they've all dried now, so my next thing to do is I'm going to put the model together and then continue painting. So with the legs, quite easy, they just literally pop in. A bit of paint rub, quite normal, and then the idea is that clicks into there and the pin connects the legs together. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pop a little bit of glue on, because I'm not really interested in letting the legs sit separately. You could leave them, but I want them to be fixed together, and then they'll hold each other in place. I want to make sure I don't get too much glue on, because I don't want it sticking to the actual model. So if I squeeze that into there, squeeze that in. The idea is I line them up so they're level. There we go. There we go. And when that's dry, they are a little tight. It's because of the paint. Should be able to move the figure. As I said, this is the prototype where I actually have reduced the legs a fraction in the correct model. So there we are. The head I'm not going to glue on. You could do. It's literally going to pop in the pegs there, and then I'm going to put the arms in. So these aren't going to get glued because they're on like a peg system, and with resin what you need to do is keep the pin nice and straight and then push it in, and there you go. You hear a little click and it's in, and that won't go anywhere. If you did keep moving them, they would keep rubbing and they'd get loose, but that's literally how they're going to stay. They're just slightly articulated. So go with the head. There we are. Fits in. And there we are. We have our model. Move those out of the way. Tail rests a little bit, give him a little bit of support, and he's looking quite good. Just need to finish off painting him. So I'm going to start adding a little bit of lighter colour. So I've got this yellow, which I've still got in my pot. I'm going to use this stippling brush, and then with a bit of a plastic bag I'm going to use that to just take excess paint off. I don't want too much on. And then what I'm going to do is just build up lots of pattern all over the body. So this does look a bit bright at the moment, but once I'm done, I will knock it back. This is just about creating tonal layers on the model. You could do it all solid in one block colour if you want, but I just thought I'm going to have a little difference of shades. It doesn't matter if I get any on the saddle because I can touch that up again. Lighter level, there we go. And then, believe it or not, think, what is he doing? I'm going to do the same with the crane or the buff. Again, just a few splodges. Right, so far that's looking fine. It does actually look a lot worse in the video because in real life that's quite subtle, but it's quite bright on camera, which is quite unusual. Just the way it picks colour up. So, right, I'm going to wash my brush out, a little bit of the brown, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of this liquid grey I've got. This is medium grey. It's actually a airbrush paint, which is good, but good for watering paints down, even though that brown is very watery already. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of some ghost grey. Dark grey, that's what I wanted. So dark it looks black. As you can see, this is totally covering the yellow, but it just adds almost like a layer of depth to the skin. So you can sort of see the lighter bits just peeking out through this watery mix of grey. It takes a long time, but it is very therapeutic. I don't know if you can tell, but it's, well, it comes up on the camera, but you can sort of see the different shades underneath. So it's not a solid grey, it's actually, you can just sort of see bits of the brown coming through, little bits of the yellow. It just gives a little bit more depth to the skin. While that's still wet, what I'm going to do is I've got what's called a basic skin tone, which I suppose is flesh tone. I'm going to stick a bit of that in, with that grey. And then mix it with that buff. There we go. So I've got much lighter colour, as you can sort of see. So I'm going to take underneath and almost do his belly. So he's now got a little bit of a lighter belly that sort of graduates in. If you do make any mistakes where you get some, it's just a case of nipping back, grabbing a little bit of the grey and the brown, or paint on that, enough water on there. Just give that a little bit of a rub, just to merge that in a bit more. There we go. I think his body is probably just about done. That's as far as I wanted to take it. So once he's dry, what I then need to do is do the nails, his mouth, horns and eyes, and then I'm going to touch up that saddle again. So he's been drying for a bit, not completely dry yet. While he's drying, I'm going to do his horns, get them done. So I'm going to use buff for this, bony looking colour. I might add a touch of grey to it as well, just to knock it back. So stick in a little bit of dark ghost grey, just to knock it back a little bit. Let's do his horns. And while the rest of it's drying, we re-tackle that saddle. There we are. Right, I'm going to do his nails and claws. So while he's drying, I've got the fake legs. They're sort of universal legs, so you could paint them if you wanted it to be Boba Fett, or you could paint them if you wanted it to be the Mando. So I'm going to go with the Mando, sorry, not that custom one, but I'm going to go with this Mando. So I need to paint the legs a darker grey, and this dark grey is so dark it looks black. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. There we go. That'll do for now, and I will leave them to dry. So as the legs dry, what I'm going to do is also prep the reins. So for the reins, I'm going to use an elastic band and cut it, and then I've got these little horn rings, which when this is all dry, they will slide on there, and the reins will happily hang from the horns to the rider. Yep, probably about that length. Just cut that with a knife. There we are, there's my reins. Now to attach them, I've got the option of I could either thread them through and tie them in small knots, but what I'm going to attempt to do is to just feed a little bit through and then glue it with super glue and hold it down until it bonds. So there is almost like a little elastic band loop going through the loop. So this is going to be incredibly fiddly. Just pop a little bit of super glue on there. Old resin lightsaber. I'm going to take that and just pop a bit of that on the elastic band. So there's just enough. And then, fingers crossed, fold that over and stick the elastic band together. Yep, it's working, it's just staying in the wrong place. There we go. Now it's in the right place. Just move it just to make sure it doesn't stick to the table. Yeah, and I'll pop a little bit of glue on there just to make sure it stays put. There we go, that's one end. And then I need to get the elastic band as straight as possible because I don't want it twisting. So the other end, oops, needs to be fed through there. Love super glue. Well, it's Gorilla Glue super glue. Same thing. There we go. So there are my reins. Okay, so he's dry. So he's got his underbelly. Next thing I want to focus on is doing the mouth. So for this, I am going to take the head off, paint that with a dark red inside. There we go. That'll do. Right, teeth I'm going to do white with a tiny little bit of the buff. There we go. I think that's enough. Thing I'm going to do is his eyes. The way I'm going to do these is with the same white paint, but then I have this Tamiya translucent, which does a really nice effect in the eyes. So because they're orange in the concept art, so now with the Tamiya translucent works brilliantly on droids. I'm now hoping that if I drop a bit in that corner, might be a bit too much. There we go. See if I do the same on this side. It's always the trick, getting two eyes to be identical. Just like popping a blob in the corner and dragging it across the eye. If I leave that slightly tilted to dry, it will be, oops, a bit more on this side, darker towards the front and lighter towards the back. So I will pop him down and leave that to dry. So there we go, the eyes have dried and they've done what I wanted them to do. I'm going to put some dots on his eyes, and I could do that with paint, or what I've got is an acrylic paint marker. Give it a really good shake. There we go, the dot on his eye. Do the same in the same place on the other side. There we go. I think that looks quite good. So I've got some minor touch-ups to do. I just need to mix some paint and just touch these up, even because I've got a bit of paint on there. So I'll sort that out and then I'll put the figure together. So I've put the head back on and it's all dry. The last thing I want to do is actually now give it a coat of satin acrylic varnish, so it just protects the paint. There we go. So I'll start with the bottom and then finish with the top. And I'll also paint the accessories. I think that'll do the trick. So it looks very shiny at the moment, but that will dry. And then when it's all dry, we will put the figure in and finish him off. So there we go. He has dried off. I assume he's a he. Just could be a she. Even colour. Got a little bit of a sheen to it. Not too glossy. Looks glossier in the video. So there we go. My Mythosaur is complete. All painted. Putting the satin on just sort of creates a little bit of tightness in some of the joints, so you just need to loosen them for the ones you want to move. I think I've fused the legs together with super glue and when I put it on, but it's going to be on my shelf, so it's not a toy. It's just so I'm not concerned about the legs moving. It's just going to be for display purposes. So I've got my different Mando figures, so I can pop one of them in. So here's a Beskar Mando custom that I did a while ago, and the idea is can slide his legs in there, give him a bit of a tilt just so he doesn't look like he's sleeping on the job. And then I've got the fake legs. You could paint these up to match the figure you're putting in. I'm just going to keep them generic, so I've just kept them grey. You could put silver bits on for Mando or do them so they look like Bob's legs, depending on which you're doing it. And the fake legs literally just clip in there. There we go. And then I've got the horn rings that I glued. They've dried now, so I'm going to pop those over the horns. There we are. And then I can actually pop the reins into Mando's hand. So it works. You can always put them in both, give him a weapon in the other one or something. There we are. So he's proper controlling the Mythosaur now. And then I've got these little accessories. There's the backpack, which pops in the hole there, so it sits on the back like so. And then the other one is the prisoner rack, which isn't in the concept drawing, but the idea is I'll pop them on there, and then if I were to stick a couple of captured prisoners on there, they can rest on there and they're not going to go anywhere. And then I've got my little Grogu and sit on the head. And then if I wanted to pop on a vintage collection figure that's got bendable legs, so for example if I go with, I think his cape's going to be a problem here. It doesn't matter, just take his backpack off. So I've got the little hatch that just literally rests in there, then that creates a more solid seat, and then I can bend his limbs, which tells me how. There we go. Yeah, I thought the cape would be a bit of an issue. I suppose you could remove that. Just need to totally bend his legs, open them up. Oh, there you go, you get the idea. You can position him into whichever position you want, and he can sit on the Mythosaur. There we go, that's my Mythosaur, which is available in my Etsy store, unpainted. Won't be doing versions painted because it takes a long time, and it's down to personal preference, and by not doing painted it gives me the chance to offer other unpainted items. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do subscribe, lots more videos coming soon.
What a piece of junk!